Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The metallic tang of blood was the only thing grounding Elian to reality as he stumbled through the relentless, freezing rain, his vision blurring with every agonizing step away from the only place he had ever called home. He didn't look back at the towering obsidian gates of the citadel, nor at the high window where a single candlelight still flickered, the bedroom of the man who would undoubtedly kill him by sunrise. Elian clutched his chest, the fabric of his tunic already soaked through with a crimson stain that had nothing to do with the storm, his breath hitching in a wet, rattling gasp. He had bought General Cassian Thorne 5 years of life, 5 years of glory, and tonight, the debt was finally paid in full, leaving Elian with nothing but a broken heart and a body rapidly shutting down. Part I. The cage of silence to the rest of the empire. General Cassian Thorne was the wolf of the north, a man carved from ice and bloodshed, ruthless in his conquest and terrifying in his governance. To Elian, he was simply the air he breathed, a necessity that burned his lungs. For 5 years, Elian had served as Cassian's personal scribe and attendant. It was a position of servitude that many whispered was actually a position of a bed warmer, though the truth was far more complicated and infinitely more painful. Elian was a spoil of war, the last son of a conquered noble house, stripped of his titles and forced to serve the man who had burned his family's banner. The dynamic between them was a razor's edge. Cassian was possessive, demanding, and often cruel in his coldness. He treated Elian like a favored possession, something valuable enough to keep in a gilded cage, yet not human enough to trust. Inside the citadel, the atmosphere was always suffocating. Cassian sat behind his massive mahogany desk, the firelight casting long, dancing shadows across his sharp, angular features. He was a devastatingly handsome man, with hair like spun midnight, and eyes the color of tempered steel. "You're trembling," Cassian's voice cut through the silence, deep and vibrating with that habitual command. He didn't look up from the maps spread before him. Elian, standing by the bookshelf, tightened his grip on the leather-bound tome he was holding. The pain in his chest was a dull roar today, a constant reminder of the siren's rot, a magical affliction he had voluntarily absorbed. "It is merely the chill, my lord," Elian lied, his voice soft, almost melodic. Cassian finally looked up. His gaze was predatory, sweeping over Elian's slender frame. He stood, the heavy movement of his armor scraping against the stone floor. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, towering over Elian. With a gloved hand, he tilted Elian's chin up. "You have been distant, Elian. More so than usual." Cassian's thumb brushed the pulse point of Elian's neck. "Have the rebels contacted you again? Is that why you shake?" Fear. Elian's heart hammered against his ribs. It wasn't fear of the rebels. It was fear of the time running out. "I belong to you, Cassian. There is no one else." "You belong to the Empire," Cassian corrected sharply, his eyes narrowing. "And I am the Empire's fist. Do not forget that your life exists only because I allow it." It was a lie they both participated in. Cassian used cruelty to mask his obsession, terrified that showing softness would reveal a weakness his enemies could exploit. Elian used submission to mask his sacrifice, terrified that speaking the truth would trigger the curse's failsafe and kill Cassian instantly. The siren's rot was an assassin's poison, originally intended for the general 5 years ago. Elian, using the forbidden blood magic of his ancestors, had drawn the poison out of Cassian's wine and into his own veins. The magic came with a condition: speak of the cure, or speak of the sacrifice, and the one you save dies. So, Elian endured. He endured the pain that felt like glass shards moving through his bloodstream. He endured Cassian's suspicions. He endured the nights where Cassian would pull him into bed, seeking comfort with a desperation he would never voice, only to wake up cold and distant the next morning. Part 2. The breaking point. The crisis began on the eve of the winter solstice. The pain had become unmanageable. Elian had been coughing up blood in secret for weeks, hiding the stained handkerchiefs in the fireplace ash. He stood before the mirror in his small, adjacent quarters. His skin was translucent, the blue veins stark against the pallor. His eyes, once a vibrant emerald, were dull and sunken. "I can't do this anymore," Elian thought, the realization hitting him with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't that he didn't want to. It was that his body was simply finished. The poison had reached his heart. He had to leave. If he died here, Cashin would investigate. He would bring in mages. They would trace the magic, and they would find the link. If Cashin discovered Elian had died saving him, the guilt would destroy the man. Or worse, the unraveling of the blood magic upon discovery might trigger the lethal backlash. Elian had to die alone, somewhere far away, branded a traitor. It was the only way to keep Cashin safe. He packed a small satchel, a change of clothes, a loaf of stale bread, and a small dagger for protection. He wrote no letter. A letter was evidence. He crept into the main chamber. Cashin was asleep, his breathing deep and even. For a tyrant, he looked remarkably peaceful in repose. Elian approached the bed, his heart aching with a sorrow so profound it threatened to buckle his knees. He reached out, his fingers hovering inches from Cashin's cheek, trembling. He wanted to scream it. He wanted to wake him up and say, I loved you more than my own life. I took the poison meant for you. I stayed by your side through your cruelty because I saw the lonely boy beneath the armor. Instead, Elian swallowed the blood rising in his throat. Goodbye, my wolf, he whispered into the darkness, a sound so faint it didn't even stir the dust motes. He turned and fled into the storm. Part 3. The hunt. Cashin woke up 2 hours later. He didn't know what woke him, perhaps the drop in temperature, or perhaps the unnatural silence where Elian's soft breathing usually filled the void. He sat up, his instincts screaming. Elian. Silence. Cashin threw off the furs and stalked to the adjoining room. Empty. The wardrobe was open. Clothes were missing. A cold fury, unlike anything he had felt on the battlefield, washed over him. It wasn't just anger, it was panic, sharp and jagged. He had convinced himself that Elian was a spy, a pet, a convenience. But seeing that empty room felt like someone had reached into his chest and ripped out a vital organ. He ran. He finally ran. Guards. Cashin's roar shook the walls. Within minutes, the citadel was awake. Torches flared. Hounds were brought out. He cannot have gone far in this storm, his lieutenant reported, looking terrified of the general's expression. The bridges are washed out. He must be heading for the old pass. Saddle my horse, Cashin ordered, grabbing his sword belt. I will hunt him down myself. Why? His mind screamed as he galloped into the blinding rain. Why run now? After 5 years? Did you finally sell my secrets? Was it all a lie? But beneath the rage, a terrified voice whispered, did I finally break him? Part 4. The snow-covered truth. Elian hadn't made it far. His body had given up 3 miles from the gates, near the ruins of an old watchtower. The cold had seeped into his bones, numbing the fire of the poison, but making his limbs heavy as lead. He collapsed into the mud and slush, coughing violently. Bright red blood splattered onto the pristine white snow that was beginning to mix with the rain. He curled into a ball, shivering. At least. At least I am far enough away, he thought, his consciousness fading. The thunder of hooves vibrated through the ground. Elian's eyes fluttered open to see a nightmare emerging from the mist. A massive black warhorse, and atop it, the silhouette of death itself. Cashin dismounted before the horse even came to a halt. He marched toward the prone figure, his cape swirling around him like smoke. He grabbed Elian by the collar of his soaked tunic and hauled him up, slamming him against the stone wall of the ruin. You thought you could leave? Cashin snarled, his face inches from Elian's. You thought you could just walk away from me? Elian hung limp in his grasp, his head lolling. He couldn't speak. The poison was constricting his throat. Answer me. Cashin shook him. Who are you meeting? Which rebel faction bought you? Elian managed to lift his head. He looked into Cashin's furious eyes and smiled. A sad, broken thing. Blood leaked from the corner of his mouth. Cashin froze. He stared at the blood. It wasn't just a cut. It was dark, viscous, and carried a scent that Cashin recognized from the battlefield, the scent of necrotic magic. Elian. Cashin's grip loosened, shifting from aggression to support. What is this? Elian tried to push him away, to make him leave, but his hands were too weak. He collapsed forward, his forehead resting against Cashin's armored chest. Let me. Go, Elian wheezed. No. Cashin ripped off his glove and pressed his hand to Elian's forehead. It was burning. He touched the side of Elian's neck and felt the erratic, thready pulse. Then he saw it. The black veins creeping up from Elian's collarbone, visible through the wet, translucent fabric. Cashin tore the tunic open. The intricate, spiderweb pattern of the siren's rot covered Elian's chest, centered directly over his heart. Cashin staggered back a step, horror dawning on him. He was a master of warfare. He knew poisons. He knew this poison. It was the chaotic magic of the Southern assassins. It was the poison that had been in his chalice at the Victory Feast 5 years ago. The chalice that had mysteriously vanished. The poison that had no cure, only a transfer. The realization hit him with the force of a siege engine. The plot holes in his own memory filled in. Elian's sudden illness 5 years ago. His refusal to let healers examine him deeply. His frail constitution. You. Cashin's voice broke. You took it. You took it from me. Elian's knees gave out. Cashin caught him, lowering them both to the muddy ground. The rain washed the blood from Elian's lips, but more welled up to replace it. Why? Cashin demanded, his voice trembling. He pulled Elian into his lap, shielding him from the rain with his heavy cloak. Why didn't you tell me? I treated you like a prisoner. Like a traitor. Elian looked up, his vision graying. He couldn't speak the truth of the curse, but now, at death's door, the binding magic was fraying. The condition was speak and the saved one dies. But if Elian died first, the magic would have no anchor. I want it, Elian gasped, fighting for every syllable. To stay? By your side. Many years. Tears, hot and foreign, spilled from Cashin's eyes, mixing with the rain on his face. The wolf of the north, the butcher, was weeping. You idiot. You foolish, self-sacrificing idiot. But, sadly, Elian's eyes began to drift shut. I can't. Anymore. Part V, the bargain no. Cashin roared. He gathered Elian up in his arms, standing with a strength fueled by pure panic. You do not get to decide that. You do not get to die for me and leave me with this debt. He threw Elian onto the saddle and mounted behind him, wrapping one arm tightly around Elian's waist and gripping the reins with the other. Hold on. Cashin commanded into Elian's ear, his voice fierce. If you let go, I will burn this entire empire to the ground. Do you hear me? I will leave nothing but ash. Cashin didn't ride back to the citadel. He rode toward the Whispering Woods, a place forbidden by the church, where the old witch doctors lived, the ones Cashin had hunted in his youth. He rode like a madman, the horse's hooves tearing up the earth. When they arrived at the hovel, Cashin kicked the door in. The crone inside looked up, unsurprised, as if she had been expecting the wolf to come begging. Save him, Cashin ordered, laying Elian on the fur-covered table. Name your price. The witch looked at the black veins. The siren's rot. He has carried this for a long time. It is etched into his soul, General. I don't care, Cashin snarled. Fix it. I cannot remove it, the witch said calmly. It demands a life. He stalled it with his own vitality, but his fuel is spent. Take mine, Cashin said instantly. The witch raised an eyebrow. You would give your life for a servant? A spoil of war. He is not a servant. Cashin screamed, the sound raw and tearing at his throat. He grabbed Elian's cold hand, pressing it to his lips. He is my soul. I was too blind to see it. Take my years. Take my strength. Just keep him breathing. The witch smiled, a terrifying, toothless expression. I cannot transfer it back to you entirely without killing you both. But I can bind you. You can share the load. Half the poison in him, half in you. You will both be in pain. You will both be weakened. Your days of conquest will be over. You will be tethered together, feeling each other's agony until the day you both die. Cashin didn't hesitate. He looked at Elian's pale, still face. He brushed a wet lock of hair from Elian's forehead. Do it. Part 6. The tether. The ritual was agony. It felt like being flayed alive. Cashin screamed until his voice gave out, holding Elian's hand so tight, he thought he might crush the bones. When he woke, it was days later. The storm had passed. He was lying in a bed in the witch's hut. A weight was on his chest. Elian was asleep, his head resting on Cashin's sternum. The black veins on Elian's neck had receded to faint gray lines. Cashin looked down at his own arm. Identical gray lines traced up his wrist. He took a deep breath. His lungs burned. His body ached with a dull, constant throb that he knew would never fully go away. He had lost half his strength. He would never wield a greatsword with the same speed again. The Empire would likely fall into chaos without the full might of the wolf. He didn't care. Elian shifted, his eyelashes fluttering against Cashin's skin. He woke slowly, confusion clouding his gaze until he saw Cashin. He jerked up, panic flaring. Cashin? You're alive? But the curse. We are sharing it, Cashin rasped. His voice was rougher now, damaged by the screaming. We are bound, Elian. Elian looked at the marks on Cashin's arm. Horror filled his eyes. No, you shouldn't have. I wanted you to live. I wanted you to be the king. I don't want to be king without you, Cashin said firmly. He reached up, cupping Elian's face. The touch was no longer possessive, it was reverent. I was a blind fool. I made you suffer in silence for 5 years. I will spend the rest of this shortened life making up for it. Elian's tears fell onto Cashin's face. It hurts, he whispered. I know it hurts you. It does, Cashin admitted. He pulled Elian down, kissing him, not with the hunger of a tyrant, but with the desperation of a drowning man finding air. But it is a pain I welcome, because it means you are still here. And that is how the Wolf of the North gave up his fangs to keep his heart beating. If you enjoyed seeing Elian's sacrifice finally be recognized, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you share a deadly curse to save the person you love, even if they had treated you poorly? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,